Hey, yo, welcome to the Godcast.
The Lord told me to tell you, wake up, wake up, wake up.
You want answers?
I think I'm entitled.
You want answers?
I want the truth!
Was there an awakening moment?
So this is like an all-encompassing awakening.
It's all-encompassing.
Every day, as they would creep in, I would just have to stop and catch myself right in those moments and say, God, I trust you. I'm not going to be afraid. I'm giving you my fear.
And I also came to the understanding of what you're saying, what you can't have light without dark. But then I started having the thought of, well, if we didn't have nighttime and we didn't have the winter, then plants would never stop growing. So if we never had issues, then we would only grow more. The thing with me, I never got into the astrology stuff. I never got into really doing any kind of energy work until I was very firm with Jesus. And it's a thing with me and Jesus where like people are praying and I'll get the sudden urge to tell that person to give your burdens to Jesus, and they'll say like, oh, I was just trying to talk to Jesus.
Welcome to Godcast,
the Goodness Over Darkness podcast.
Here's your host, Emmanuel Kingman.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome to Godcast, the Goodness Over Darkness podcast. I'm your host, Emmanuel Kingman, and here with me for the intro is the wonderful Mimi.
It's me. Hello.
Hello, my love. How are you?
I'm all right.
So, on today's podcast, we had on special guest Dr. Amy Novotny. And Dr. Amy, she really brought the heat with her breathing technique, and it's a little bit different than mine, but it's very similar in some aspects. What was one thing that you took away from this episode that really is going to benefit you going forward?
I need to step up my marathon game, that's for sure. I've done 2 5Ks in my life, the Color Run and Tunnels to Towers. And that was a big feat for me. 2 5K, that one was a big feat for me because I am definitely not a runner at all. So for her to do, 50 plus miles in one run, that's hats off to you.
And she had 1 year of 12 marathons plus a few ultra marathons. I mean,
I've been approached to train for triathlons, and I'm like, no way am I going in water. Nope.
Yeah. Well, so the amount of running that she describes doing, that's just really mind-blowing to me, because when I was running, I would get very sore doing 6 miles. I would do that 2-3 times a week. I would do 6 miles, and the next day I'd be very sore. And she says in there that you have to really move the next day after, because when you sit still, then your muscles just tense up, and then you're really not benefiting yourself because you're so tense.
And I like that she evaluates her body, during the run to, if something is hurting and her breathing needs to be switched up in some way to help her be in less pain and make an easier run. That's what she does.
Yeah. She takes stock in her body all the time. I imagine that she's pretty much, it's second nature to her now. It's second nature to me to take stock in my body at all times. I'm paying attention to detail to so many different things at once in my body, as well as what's going on in the external world, because it becomes second nature when you're really doing this on a regular basis. Then it becomes second nature, but it has to become second nature. And in order to do that, you kind of have to learn what's going on in your body and where you need to what you need to improve so that you can benefit yourself. And it kind of starts with your breathing. And what did you think of that she said that it really all starts with the breath, and from there you go into the mental stuff that you're holding on to and emotional stuff? But what's your thoughts on that?
Well, I think with the breath work that you and I do, I mean, you do more than me, but I know to do it, and I think that's the
And
first
you know
step.
how to do it.
That's the first step, is to know that you do need to stop and breathe sometimes, and take stock in your emotions and take stock in your body and figure out where the uprise is and calm it down.
Yeah.
So I think breathing exercises is something that a lot of people need. Everybody needs.
Oh yeah, everybody. I mean, it's a
It'd
daily
be a lot
dose.
less tense world.
Yeah, yeah, a daily dose of life essence, and it's more than
Mhm.
daily. It's in the moment. You know,
Oh yeah.
I tell people, clients all the time. I'm like, look, if you're in a situation and you start to get emotional,
Yep.
breathe, because, well, firstly, that person's not just going to walk away from you because you decided to take a deep breath in front of them. You know, we have this uh, inherent sense in us that we have to be doing this now, instead of just pausing and slowing down the
Mhm.
process, slowing down time, essentially slowing down this interaction. And when you can really just slow it down, it really benefits everybody, but it draws things out of others that may still exist in there that shouldn't be in there. So it's a multifaceted process when you are doing this deep breathing. And apparently, it's very important to breathe through the nose specifically. So even just switching, if you're a mouth breather, and I think she said the majority of people are, I forget exactly how it was
Yeah,
worded.
she said in through the nose and out through a straw if possible.
Yeah, yeah, but just on a regular
Mhm.
basis, what we're talking about here is,
Mhm.
if you're just like going through your day, just breathe in through the nose instead of through the mouth, because it funnels it out, and there's so
Filters it, yeah.
yeah, yeah, excuse me, filters it. And there's so many different benefits that your body gets from that filtering process, that it's not only is it moisturizing, which I didn't know that that's what that
Mhm.
does. So it's making your oxygen more moist, but it's also doing a number of things, health benefits to you, and keeping out things that aren't good for you. So that was greatly enlightening to me. So yeah, we spent a lot of time just talking about the breathing. This was a shorter interview for us, but I'm on this podcasting match site called Podmatch, and I've been linking up with some really great people on there. And a lot of people don't want to go for the extended period of time that I typically go for. An hour and a half, 2 hours. It is a lot of time, and she's a very busy woman. I mean, I can only imagine that the amount of time she puts into her clients and podcasting and business and so many different things. We don't want to be holding anyone up. So this one is a shorter one for the audience. I know some people think that my episodes are a little long sometimes. The That's really the only complaint I really get, is that the episode's a little too long or the intro's a little too long, but they're few and far in between of those kind of complaints. Um, do you have anything else for?
That'll be it for me. I can't wait to get in touch with her later.
Yeah, definitely get in touch with Dr. Amy. She knows her stuff. She is really a very, very kind person. She does free consultation, 15-minute calls, which again, that's very similar to me. I do free calls as well to talk to people. She'll give you resources for free if you are in need of resources. She responds within 24 hours. I mean, she's doing a lot of things. She is very, very kind. And we didn't get into her story here, but I recommend you guys go check out other podcasts that she's been on. And she talks about things that she's been through in her life, that it's just really
Very
incredible.
interesting,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah, it's really incredible. And I highly suggest you go absorb all that you can from her, and really just it would do you and your family and friends and everyone around you great benefits to interact with her and have her into bringing her into your sphere of awareness. So I think that will do it. I will, of course, have all the links in the description. And she said, just send her an email, get in touch, uh, see what's going on. Send our love, of course. If you reach out to her. Make sure you go to my website, emmanuelkingman.com. That's IMMANUEL Kingman.com.
Oh,
And
that reminds me, I have to have you switch my contact information when you put mine up. It's the wrong one.
the
But it's
Facebook
okay.
page.
Yes.
Oh, sorry. Okay, we'll have to switch that in the notes. Yeah. So, and of course, yeah. If anyone didn't know, I haven't even said it that Mimi's Facebook page is in the notes, but obviously it's the wrong one. So I'll put the right one.
It is our group page where we post like the exclusive deals every so often, but I'd like to get everyone on our regular main Facebook page as
Okay.
well.
Well, I'll get them both on there then. So that
And Instagram and TikTok, and I'm gonna give them all the links now.
okay, yeah, there you go. Oh, and we have. So let me finish up with my energy work. Yeah, so go on there, and don't buy anything. Just see what is available. Then contact me. Have the free consultation. We will talk things out. We will figure out what's the best process for you, whether it be a mentorship program, a spiritual baptism, a chakra cleansing, if you just want to learn how to
Or none of the
meditate,
above.
or that
Yeah.
you just need some resources.
Right.
And I gladly do these things for free. And I say that I'm limiting the free consultation to 30 minutes, but they always go for an hour. I'm not going to shy
You
people
guys know how
away.
short-winded he is.
Yeah. I'm not going to push people away, people that are in need. That's just not my nature. So when we're talking, we're going to talk through things. Unless I am, up against it because I have something else to do, we're going to keep talking. So I enjoy hearing from everybody. I enjoy hearing from people who like the show and that it's helping them. I enjoy the feedback. I get a lot of people messaging me about how they enjoy the show for this reason or that reason, comments on YouTube. I love all the interaction. Keep it coming in. Make sure you like, share, comment, rate, review, share it directly with somebody. However, you can contribute to the podcast, that is greatly appreciated. You can donate if you'd like on my website or at my PayPal account. Uh, you can feel free to do so. But if not, then just please try to like, share, and do all that type of stuff. But I did want to say, because I didn't get it into the last episode, we didn't get to talk about it because we were sent this beautiful gift after it happened. So Nomad from the Nomad podcast,
Oh yeah.
he created a song that we're using for the bridge right now. It may not always stay as the bridge, but it's like an intro from the intro to the interview. So it's a bridge from there. Nomad, GNOMAD. He made this. He had me on his podcast, and he was like, "Hey, if there's anything that I can do to help the podcast, just let me know."
Oh, it's gonna be
And he's a what? What's
It's
going?
gonna be on this one?
Yeah, of
All
course.
right.
It's going to be on
Yay.
everyone.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I wasn't sure what the first one was gonna be. Okay.
It was on the one that came out today. So this will be 93. It's in episode 92. I worked it in there.
I have to watch the video.
Yeah, so he made a video for it as well. Just incredible stuff. He did it in one day. I was like, yeah,
The
I don't
song
need it
is
for several
awesome.
days.
I
Yeah.
love it.
So he makes music. He's a podcast host himself. He makes art. His music is really well done. He said he's been making music for 12 years now. He's 28, young man, but he's really knows the stuff. He's really good at all this type of stuff. So I really recommend you all go check out his podcast, check out all of his different stuff, and his links are in the description as well, and they will be as long as his stuff is part of my podcast. His links will be there as well. So I recommend you guys check him out. And maybe if you're someone who goes around on podcasts, hit him up. He's just started out his podcast, but he did a great job of hosting. The way he had slides put together ready for us. I mean, he was
on
on
it.
point. He was on
point.
point. So I really recommend you guys go check him out. And I think that's probably going to do it for this intro. So here
Buckle up.
comes
Here it comes.
here comes the bridge, and then that'll lead right into our interview with Dr. Amy Novotny. Enjoy, everybody. We will talk to you guys later.
Welcome to the Godcast. Cross up on my back, I'm slaying demons. It don't matter what you call that. Searching for the truth, facts are facts until they fall flat. It's looking like a story, man, it's all cap. But it's goodness over darkness, it ain't all bad. I'm at my maker, but I was called back. Emmanuel, show my people they're under a spell. Heaven or hell is free will. I made my choice and now it's well with my soul. I pray the same for you as well. Welcome to the Godcast. Welcome to the Godcast.
Hello, everybody. On today's episode, I have on a guest who is helping heal the human body. She can alleviate pain, stress, and anxiety to the point of possibly eliminating various orthopedic surgeries. She is a doctor of PT, a breathing/pain specialist, author, photographer, and even an ultra marathoner. She has authored 2 #1 best-selling Amazon books, Don't Quit, Stories of Persistence, Courage, and Faith, as well as Success Habits of Superachievers. Everybody welcome Dr. Amy Novotny to the show. Welcome to the show, Doctor. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you, Emmanuel, and Mimi. It's a pleasure to meet both of you.
Yeah, it is a pleasure to have you on. So why don't you tell my audience a little bit about yourself? You seem to run the gamut on different things that you do in your life.
Yes, I've always been fascinated with life ever since I was a little kid, and I remember just always being curious, always wanted to learn, was very growth oriented. If I saw someone doing it, why can't I do it? And so whatever I was fascinated in, I just dove in head first and not necessarily mastered everything, but at least got enough proficiency that I could do more and more. And so it's led to a variety of interests: photography, running, trying to push the limits of my physical body, as well as I'd see people in pain. And from the get-go, I remember seeing my mom stressed out as a little kid, and I was like, why in the world is she stressed out all the time? And growing up and then seeing people in pain and realizing there's a strong connection between pain and stress. Well, how can we really address that and look at it differently? And that kind of led me down a different path. And so now I have this business where I work with people worldwide and helping them calm down their nervous system to get out of pain. So it's kind of a windy route to get to where I am now.
Yeah, and you have a fascinating story. I was listening to an appearance that you had elsewhere before earlier this afternoon, and you have quite the story from going all around the world, running marathons, and helping heal someone who was in need of assistance medically, and you just had him breathe, and he was fine and ready to go eat. I mean, you have some really fascinating stuff. So, do you want to walk us through just a brief snippet of how you became into the world of PT and physical health and all of that?
Yeah, so when I was in college, I was going down the research ecology route, and I realized I loved people, really enjoyed working with people. And so I graduated college and I just got a job as an assistant. I spoke Spanish and French, so I was able to work as a translator in a physical therapy clinic. Wow. And I really enjoyed that. And so then I decided to apply for a doctoral program, went and did that. But that's kind of what really got me on into it. I didn't have injuries. A lot of people who become physical therapists have some type of injuries from athletics. I didn't have any of that. It was just a matter of, I don't like to see people suffering. And so that got me into that world, and then it's branched off since then.
Okay, well, that's very fascinating that you're a translator as well. I mean, I heard earlier that you said you wanted to go for all A's throughout your whole life to see what that would be like, and that if you got less than 100, you would kind of be a little hard on yourself. What was that process like? Because I know that there's a letting go process of understanding that you're uh, that holding such a high standard for yourself is a very high stress inducing type of environment. So what was it like realizing that that's not necessarily healthy for you?
It was a hard realization, and I didn't really get to that point until about several years ago. I was introduced to Robert Kiyosaki, who wrote Rich Dad Poor Dad, and I read his book. And then I started attending different seminars and webinars, or not webinars, but seminars and conferences where he was presenting and speaking, and other people of like mind who really encourage people to make mistakes, that is where growth is, and to not be afraid of making mistakes. It's okay if you're not perfect. And just going through that process, it was, let me tell you, it's like a blanket that lifts off you when you realize you don't have to be perfect, and it's okay to be human. At times I try not to go back and look at things with regret. I made the best decisions I could growing up to try to get all straight A's because I knew that was the only way I was going to college. So I don't know if I would have changed anything, but maybe if I had a different perspective, I would have. But going forward, I do look at, okay, I will show up the best that I can. And those who know me know that I try and I'm authentic, and I really give all my effort to whatever I'm doing. But it doesn't have to be perfect.
Yeah, and I do know that clients really appreciate someone who gives that helping hand, that going that extra mile for them, trying to make the effort. That they really see that and they respect it. When you don't, when you can't make the effort, they understand. They're like, okay, I know that that person's trying. So it really speaks to your character when you say that you try answering your clients within 24 hours. I mean, that's you're traveling internationally, you're working with some high profile clients. So in order for you to do all of that, I'm sure that you are bombarded with things. So for you to take that extra effort, that's very meaningful to somebody who is looking for some assistance.
Yeah.
No, go ahead. You wanted to respond?
I was going to say, sometimes it's hard for people to reach out. And so I take that seriously when someone really takes the time and is vulnerable enough to reach out to tell me something's wrong. I definitely want to be there for them.
Yeah, I had a client reach out this afternoon. She said it took her a week to be able to muster up the courage to reach out to me. And, it touches my heart every time someone reaches out to me and they're seeking assistance from me. It's amazing. And I do breathing techniques and I teach breathing techniques. And what's incredible about the breathing techniques that you're teaching is that you can help people avoid surgeries through a very similar manner that I'm doing when I'm listening to you explaining it. I'm like, oh, okay, that's what I do. I just didn't verbalize it in that way. But once you verbalize it, I was checking my own process and saying, oh, okay, that is exactly as I'm doing. So you put it in such a brilliant way. So do you want to walk us through your breathing technique?
Yeah, and I do want to clarify a little bit about how people get out of surgeries through it. So the breathing is one piece of the puzzle when we're working on getting someone out of surgeries. Just by breathing, you're not going to get out of surgery for the most part. You're working on using breathing to help change your nervous system so that you can sense muscles relax and other ones activate, which changes your body position to get you out of the impingement that's causing pain. So it's the breathing. I don't want people to think, okay, I can just breathe and I'm going to go do this 4 steps of breathing and all of a sudden I'm going to poof, I'm great.
Right.
There's a lot more to it than that. It's an actual process, but it does work to get people out of surgeries, but it requires people to transform themselves and to change their habits, including the way they breathe. So I just want to make sure I clarify that so that way people can understand there is It's not woo woo. There is a physiological process that's happening, and there is a change in your body to get you to the point where you're out of surgery. So, did you want me to go through kind of just some of the basic steps?
Yeah, just
Okay.
the basic process of what your breathing technique consists of.
Sure. So what we're doing is we start with four steps, and it's going to seem pretty easy, and it's going to seem like there's nothing too great about it, but it gets more involved. You start with breathing in your nose. You pause a second. You blow out through your mouth, or if you have a straw, I prefer people having a straw, and then you hold your breath for 3 seconds. When you first start off, highly likely you will not be able to hold your breath for 3 seconds. You might be able to hold it for 1 second, 2 seconds. Some people who are experienced in this world can do it for 3 seconds or longer. But for the most part, if someone's in the fight or flight status or they're pretty ramped up, they typically don't hold for that full 3 seconds, and that's okay. As we get into that and you practice those 4 steps, then we start working on your body position and getting you to sense your rib cage changing positions. We want to get the rib cage to drop down and your belly to spill out as you exhale, not suck your gut up and in as you exhale, which is traditionally taught. The more you suck it up and in, the more you're lifting up your rib cage and you're doing a disservice to your diaphragm. When your rib cage is elevated, that means your diaphragm doesn't have support, and so the diaphragm can't drop down to create a great inhalation. The other thing that we go through, which is very counterintuitive to most breath work out there as well, is this whole idea of diaphragmatic breathing. When you breathe in, I do not tell people to push their belly out and do belly breathing. That's abdominal distension. That's not using your diaphragm. So I don't want to try to have someone learn how to shove their abdominal contents outward. I want them to learn how to have their side abdominal muscles provide support for the diaphragm so the diaphragm can drop down and create this vacuum where air flows in. And that's a lot of the science of it. It's hard to implement because we've been patterned since we were a little kid to suck our gut up and in as we blow out.
Mm-hmm.
And the kids that listen, those are the ones that I usually have working with me who have some type of pain or that have some like ADD or ADHD because they're so ramped up and they can't calm down. So we work on shifting so that your breathing is almost like when you were a toddler and their bellies are out and they're not worried about sucking it all up and in. And as they blow out, their belly can come out and it's not this suck it in and hold it up. So.
Yeah, that's very interesting. So when I teach people, what the first thing I do, because like you said, you can't really hold it that long. Say when I first started out, sorry, hold on one second, my dog. I was teaching 4 to 7 seconds. I would hold my breath, and then I realized right away I was like, oh, that's too long for people.
Way too long.
Yeah, that people, it took practice for me to get there. So what I found to teach people is breathe in through the nose and then swallow it as if you're swallowing water and then exhale through the mouth. And that really helps drop the chest down. It helps the diaphragm drop down, like you said. It helps the belly. Not that it goes outward in the negative sense, but that the airflow goes down and around and then up and through. And then it's like relieving all of this tension just by breathing and swallowing it, just like you swallow water. And when you tell someone to swallow it like they're swallowing water, it really gives them a sense of, I know what I'm doing. I know how to do it. So that was something that really came to me. And it was like the most brilliant thing that I ever thought of, because when I can relay something, it's one thing to teach myself to learn these things in different meditations and have these thought processes come to me, but to be able to relay that message to someone else, it's difficult. So when I get something like that, to break it down that simply, it was life-changing for me to be able to, because it helped me also realize what I was doing actually, because I didn't understand it at the moment.
Yeah. Yeah, I haven't heard of swallowing your air before. That's something new. So I'll have to ponder on that one. Think on it.
Yeah, maybe give it a try and see how it works for you.
Yeah.
So how did you come up with this breathing technique? Was this something that was your idea? Did you find it somewhere else?
So there's always, just as with anything in life, there's always influences from other places. And my journey in learning about breathing in the diaphragm started with the Postural Restoration Institute in Nebraska. And they look at asymmetries in your trunk and organs and how your muscles are attached. And they look at how those asymmetries lead to limitations in motion and can lead to pain. So they look at breathing in that sense. But it was when I was on a treadmill training for the Boston, or training to qualify for the Boston Marathon, that I started experimenting with different types of breathing. And I just started playing with myself to see if I breathed a certain way, what happened? Did I get tighter? Did I get looser? And so I started stumbling on this whole idea of, if I could drop my rib cage down and in and my belly spilled out as I exhaled, that's when your diaphragm is reforming. It's actually getting bigger as I blow out if I can drop my ribs down. And so once I realized I want my diaphragm as big as possible from the exhalation, that way I can get more air in on the inhalation, it started shifting the way I felt. So I was able to get off after an 8-mile run. I could get off and I didn't have to roll. I didn't have to stretch. I didn't, the foam rolling, I didn't have to stretch. I didn't have to scrape. I didn't do all those things that I used to teach people as a physical therapist. And I realized, okay, I'm on to something. And I looked at other breathing styles, and it was different from what I was doing. So I realized, okay, there is another component. What is it that's different about if I teach it this way? And it was the body position is critical. The body position, your rib cage position, dictates how you breathe. It dictates whether you breathe in fight or flight mode, or it dictates whether you breathe in parasympathetic relaxation. And so once I realized that and I started pairing those together, I realized that so much of our pain, stress, and anxiety comes down to 3 interacting systems: your body position, your nervous system, that fight or flight nervous system or relaxation system, and the way you breathe. And there's an interplay, and they're very entangled, and you can't really tease them apart. So you kind of have to work in this ebb and flow and say, okay, I'm going to work on my body position so it enhances my ability to relax, but it also enhances the way I breathe. Well, now I have to match my breathing mechanism so it relaxes me, but also matches my body position. And so you go through this, and that's why it comes with a process. So when I work with people, it's not just we're going to sit here and breathe. We're going to go in all different positions. We're going to teach you how to use your legs while you're breathing to calm down your nervous system and get your ribs into position. We're going to teach you how to do your arms in that. We're going to do an interplay where your arms and legs are moving, and then include twisting. And there's all different things that go on with it.
Wow. Wow, that is pretty incredible, because when I do my breathing exercises, I notice that sometimes my body just wants to naturally move in a new position, and I allow it to move there, and my breathing does change with it. I'm not trying to force a square into a round hole. I'm just going with the flow. I'm becoming one with the life essence that is flowing through me in this oxygen. And that is what is really important, that we talk about breathing is helping us to be able to avoid certain things or to heal certain things. And it releases so much stress. And what that really is, and this is what John the Baptist talked about in the Gospel of John about Jesus, is eat of my flesh, drink of my blood. It's the life essence in the air that you breathe in. And we know that we can fast, so you don't necessarily need food all the time. And I'm not going to go on a religious thing here, but it's this thing where we don't understand the importance of breath work, and how it can really heal us, and letting go of these stresses and tensions that we hold within us. Is it a common practice for you to take stock in your body and to let go of tensions that you're holding? Because I know for me, when I'm standing around, I take stock in my body, and a lot of the times in my legs and in my butt area, I'll notice that I'm tightening those muscles, and then I'll just let it go, and then I'll let go of energy that I've been holding on to that I didn't realize I was doing. So is that a common practice you do?
Absolutely, all day long, because I'm on Zoom calls with people all day long working on calming themselves down. So as I'm coaching people through this, I can also take stock on myself and say, okay, where am I holding tension? Am I truly relaxed? Am I letting go? If I'm writing or typing, I'm constantly making sure, okay, are my shoulders up? Okay, if they are, I need to go through the steps to bring them down. And so I'm constantly working on that, including those steps with breathing to help me make sure that I don't store stress in my body. I don't store the emotions that typically happen in all humans. We often store them in different places that are very common. So I really do a check-in every single day to make sure, okay, nope, good. Keep it at bay.
Yeah, for sure. Because it's a constant thing. Even when I'm sitting here, sometimes I can feel, my left trap will want to go up just a little bit, or, different areas of my body. I just feel it, and then I'm like, okay, I gotta let that go, and then I breathe in and allow the life essence to go in there. Is there science behind the oxygen and the life essence that I'm talking about here? Is there science behind that really tells us in words, and experimental practices that we can recreate over and over, that this is a real phenomena that has real effects?
Well, there's a lot of research on the importance of oxygen in all of your body processes. And one of the things with COVID right now, or on the first few variants, is we would get oxygen to our lungs, but it didn't cross over into the blood. And that's where a lot of people struggled, is even if they were on oxygen, they couldn't get it to be taken into the blood. And if you can't get that to happen, then you reduce the oxygen in your blood. That leads to a lot of detrimental effects. But a lot of times people are actually overinflated in their lungs. They have a buildup of carbon dioxide, and so they can't get that out. And so that really comes into play with the mechanics of how they're exhaling to really get all the dead air out of them. But breathing itself, I mean, there's so many different ways that it helps. Like one of the proponents of breathing in through the nose is it helps moisturize the oxygen. It helps warm it up. It helps filter it so that you can filter out microbes, bacteria, fungus, viruses. The other thing it does is it helps with nitric oxide production. And what nitric oxide is important for is it is also an antimicrobial substance in our body, but it also helps open blood vessels. So when we think of oxygen, it is critical on so many levels, because it's not just for us breathing, but it's for our whole body functioning, how our muscles work, how if we breathe in through our nose, that opens up our blood vessels to get more blood flow to help with inflammation or healing. How you breathe in and out. If you breathe in through your nose, it's on a good effect. It can help with your palate. If you breathe in through your mouth, there's just different issues that are, show up with breathing in through your mouth. So I would say, looking from a medical perspective, there are many more reasons than just getting oxygen into our body that breathing takes care of.
Okay, well, that's that is some great information. So when you said with the COVID getting the oxygen to the blood, is there a way that you know of that could get oxygen into the blood, and also a way to get that carbon dioxide that's stuck in the lungs out?
Well, that's part of what science was working on, is how do you get more oxygen from the blood into, or from the lungs into the bloodstream. There are different medications out there that aren't really used for that purpose, but that's one of the reasons, like if you have cyanide poisoning, the medication they give is for doing that. It's for getting blood back into your oxygen so you don't die. But that's not like a common medication that you can give to everyone.
Right.
So they do it, through respirators and other ways, but also working to calm down your inflammation is the best way, so that you can calm down your inflammation so oxygen can be transported. And that's, when people are having the severe reactions with COVID, that's why they were working on, okay, how do we get rid of inflammation? How do we get this person's immune response to calm down a little bit, so they don't have that overactive immune response that leads to the downfall. In terms of working on getting your air out of your body, the dead air out, that's a matter of mechanics. And so that's also why I say you want to change the way you exhale. Most people, if you suck your gut in as you exhale, you're going to hold air in. You're going to be overinflated. But the more you can work on dropping your ribs down and in and get your belly to come out so your diaphragm reforms, that's going to help you be able to get the dead air out.
Okay, yeah, I do a technique where I teach people to squeeze it out. So my process, we breathe in through the nose, we swallow the breath, and then we take the life essence from the breath, and then we put it in our different energy centers, also known as chakras. That we put it in all those places, focus on the bottom all the way up, and we squeeze. And when we squeeze, I just have this ability to wear the person that I'm dealing with. It's some kind of spiritual gift that was just given to me. That
Awesome.
yeah. So I help them squeeze out everything that's in there, and it really comes out in all these fantastical ways. Sometimes people will cough a lot, but that doesn't even happen all that often. It's more that they're bursting out, that they have so much pent up energy that has just been like living in there. And it's sometimes I can kind of see it. It's like people are just like camping in the woods, like, oh, we're just hanging out here, and it's like, no, you guys got to go. It's time to go home.
Yeah.
So it's very interesting that I've been doing these types of things without even knowing that. Lo and behold, here you are. I mean, you are traveling internationally doing these types of things, and really bringing a useful and I don't want to say simplistic, but an easier way for people to start to heal themselves and not necessarily need to go into deeper medicines or deeper surgeries. So, what are some of the cases that, like with Robert Kawasaki? Excuse me. That was a very interesting story that I heard. Do you want to tell the tale of how he was searching for his body healer?
Yeah. So with Robert Kiyosaki, he wrote Rich Dad Poor Dad. It's the top-selling financial book in the world. I think over 40 million copies, and very well known. So I had read his book. If you haven't read it, I would really recommend that anyone to read it. It's about changing your mindset and gaining some financial education to help you not be scraping by. And it does take some leap of faith to try to follow some of the guidelines that he has, but it really does a great job. And so I was at an event where he was speaking and he was doing a book signing. So I bought another one of his books and I went up to him and I just said, hey, thank you for writing this book. It helped me change my life. And it's very kind. And he said, well, how did it do that? Like, what do you do? And so I told him that I help people get out of pain. I calm their nervous system down and change the way they breathe. And he said, well, can you help me? And I said, sure, you name it and I'll help you. Just tell me when. And he's busy and, he has a entourage of people around him always wanting his attention. And he came up to me the next night at dinner and said, when are you going to help me? I said, anytime you want. And he said, okay, right now. I said, okay, let's go. So I started teaching him some of what we discussed today, not all of it, but we touched on some of what we talked about plus some more. And within a few minutes, he said, wow, the pain is going away. I said, I would expect it to. And he said, okay, well, can you help me more? I said, sure, let's do some work tomorrow. And so I worked with him the next day and the pain went away. And he came back the next day and he said it's the first time in over a year that he hadn't had the pain. And he was shocked and he slept for the first time in over a year, all night through. And so we did some more work. And by the time the conference was ending, he felt great. But of course, it's like once you drink the Kool-Aid, you want to keep going. So, we've kept in touch and all that. But that's one case where he had pain from an incident that happened in his life. And no doctor could figure it out. And they did all the scans. He went to all the specialists. They couldn't figure it out. But it wasn't an orthopedic injury in the sense that he didn't have a tendon tear, he didn't have a broken bone. It was his nervous system had ramped up enough that caused the muscles to contract and pulled his bones out of position. When that happens, you have impingement and voila, you have pain.
Wow, that is incredible. So, do you think this was stress and emotional trauma that possibly was causing this, and that your breathing technique helped him release some of that?
No, he had actually had a physical thing that happened. He had a fall. So that was the start of it. But the
Okay.
stress puts you into a protective state that then leads to your body not being able to move correctly, that can lead to the development of pain. But it wasn't like stress just all of a sudden popped up and then he had pain. That happens to a lot of people, not this case, but that happens to a lot of people where their stress builds up over time. And with each stressor, the muscles change positions, the bones change positions, and you know, they wake up the next day, all of a sudden things have shifted more over time. They have another big stressor, the bones shift enough, now things start to pinch together, you get pain.
Wow. So, is that why people think that aging is associated with pain, or pain is associated with aging? Because I know that when I speak to my parents, my mom says, we're getting older. And I'm like, yeah, well, they are. And my dad has done a lot of physical work in his life. But is this something that just your average blue collar carpenter of 50 years, 40 some years could pick up and start to be a little pain free on a more daily basis?
Yeah, so what I recommend, so someone who hasn't had some type of experience like this before, keep in mind it's a process. It's first you have to change the way you breathe, and we do it in certain positions. Then we start integrating other aspects in with it. Just know anyone can learn this. If you can think, if you can talk, you can converse, you can remember, you can learn this. I've even done this with some clients that have had dementia, and that requires maybe a little bit more hands-on. But if you are thinking and you can absorb what I'm saying, and I break it down based on a person's knowledge and experience, you can learn this. It just requires some patience and understanding that you've had a certain set habits for most of your life. So now we have to work on taking you away from those habits and progressing you.
Okay.
That was going to be my question. Age-wise, I have a teenager that is going through some orthopedic stuff right now. She has bilateral labral tears in both hips. And, we still have to go through more x-rays, more MRIs, more physical therapy, you have to go through these insurance procedures, but it doesn't stop the pain, and I don't want her on a bunch of medicines, so I would love to teach her this.
So someone like her, where she's had a couple different things, it's definitely going to be a process. She has to learn how to do these. So I haven't trained other people on how to teach this yet. That's something that I do plan for the future, but she could learn step by step because every person is different. So what I would teach your daughter depends on how her body responds to step one of what we do. If her body responds a certain way, we're going to do the next thing. If her body responds a different way, we're going to do something different. So it's not just a linear program of, okay, here's the recipe, off you go.
Right.
It's what is her body doing? What does she sense and what does she feel? So if I give her an exercise of, let's do breathing plus something with her leg, well, can she feel the muscles working, and can she still calm down her ribs and her back while she feels those muscles working? If she can't, then we have to change the position and have her do it differently until we get that same response that we need. So it really depends. With your daughter, depends on how perceptive she is. Can she feel things? Depends on what other activities is she doing? What is her stress like? How does she handle stress? So there's a lot of interplay on doing that. And typically with teenagers, they learn fast. They don't have any set ways they need to be, so they can learn faster than than typical, than like an adult who kind of is set in the ways. And I'm like that too. I mean, we're all like that. But so it is a process for her to allow her body to get into a position where her labrum are not fraying just from existing. Which,
Yes. It sounds like a lot of it is actually mental. That it's you were saying, how does she handle stress? What is causing her stress? A lot of these things that we don't associate normally with pain. And you're saying, yeah, that's like what I want to look for, because that is the calling card, essentially, that I have to figure out their line of thinking. I have to figure out their method of handling things in order to help them realize what the issue is, because they are really the ones that are healing themselves. You're guiding them through this. They're healing themselves through breathing in and letting go of the tension, because we build up this tension, and our bodies always hold on to the negative stuff. The negative stuff wants to come out of us, and we hold it in. And we're like, no, I'm not letting it go. I'm not going to stop being angry because someone made me angry, and it makes me feel good to be angry. But if we just let that go, then all of a sudden the tension isn't there, and now we can have a beautiful conversation, even though someone may have done something to affect us. To hold on to that and hold a grudge, so to speak, that really damages us. Is that something that you encounter often, people who are holding on to things?
yes, and it's very common that we hold on to things. And I don't think it's meant out of malice. It's how we were programmed from generations before, from our
Right.
parents. We're taught to hold on to things. And a lot of times people are taught by holding on to something, that means you're giving it meaning, and that means you actually care, which is not healthy for anyone involved. And so learning to let go obviously is the best thing, but a lot of times it requires a change in your thought process and your beliefs, because that determines your brain neurochemistry. If I'm thinking I'm a horrible person all day, my brain neurochemistry is going to change to reflect that. And so I'm just going to keep going down and down and down, because now that's all those chemicals that are floating around in there and making me operate. Those ones are existing. But I can't go to someone and say, who is extremely depressed, and say, well, just change your thoughts. It's as simple as that.
Right.
You can't really do that. You have to work through, okay, what are all the facets that are adding into that depressed state? Is it neurochemistry? Is it food? Is it lack of movement? Is it the way they're breathing? Is it their fight or flight nervous system? So, and they may not be able to handle 5 different new things at once. It may be one thing at a time. So there is that mental aspect, and every time we have a mental trigger that leads to something negative, and it can be something positive too, like let's say you just won something, but you feel that extreme fight or flight, that's going to lead to a physical change in the way your muscles operate. So your body is going to start to hold things. If you can, well, sometimes you can't even feel that physical change, it just happens.
Wow. Well, so when you say that feeling of maybe you just won something and that excited, are you talking about that? Maybe it's a staticky, warm type of feeling that your body feels kind of jumpy, jittery. Is that the type of feeling you're talking about?
It can be that, or let's say you just got a new job or something, you got a promotion, you kind of get ramped up and you're like, yes, like that's still a fight or flight status, because you're ramping yourself up. It doesn't always have to be a negative emotion. It can be a positive thing too. Even something as simple as working out at the gym, pushing your limits at the gym, that's still going to ramp you up. That's a physical way that you get ramped up, but that still leads to a fight or flight status, which is, if you think about bodybuilders, weightlifters, what do they say? They say, oh, I'm so inflexible. I'm tight. I can't bend over and touch my toes. Well, they've ramped themselves up physically, and they're lifting weights and pushing the limits. They forgot to release and let go so that the muscles can go back into their resting position. And so once they learn how to do that and change the way they breathe, they gain their flexibility and mobility back.
Wow. So when you are exercising, we'll say when someone is using dumbbells, for example, is there something that is there a breathing technique that they could be doing during this exercise that may help put the muscles back in place right then and there? Or is this something that you recommend to do after the exercise?
It depends on the person. So
Okay.
before we even start anything, is you need to learn how to breathe in a simple position, seated, lying down, different positions that we start with. You can't start implementing a new breathing mechanics in the middle of some type of movement and expect it to be easily absorbed into your nervous system. It's really hard just to do it simply sitting down. So we always start there and say, okay, just keep doing your workouts. But as you start to learn different aspects of this technique of breathing and body positioning, then we start incorporating it into your weightlifting routine or your running routine or whatever it is. But it is extremely hard to change something as fundamental as breathing and body position if you're moving. It's
Right.
just hard.
Right. So then you want to learn the process, and then you want to integrate it into your movement, and then figure out how you can adopt your movements or adopt your breathing to make sure that they're matching and keeping yourself in one position, like you said earlier, with the relaxation, the body position, and the breathing. You want that to all match. So this is something that especially people who are exercising at a high rate, they are paying attention to their body at a very keen position. I myself, I lost 100 pounds
Wow.
exercising. I was in very good shape 2 years ago at this point,
Mm-hmm.
but things kind of changed for me with my workout routine. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm not as in good shape now, but I did start ramping up again. But something that I really pay attention to, okay, how can I make, what am I doing wrong? Because I'm feeling tension in my lower back when I'm doing something. Maybe I'm in the wrong position. So maybe it was my breathing at that moment. I wasn't breathing properly to be able to lift without hurting my lower back.
Absolutely. And a lot of people are back dominant. They use their back to walk, to reach, to bend over, to lift, and don't even realize it. The
Mm.
more we use our back, the more we're going to be flared up in our fight or flight nervous system. But we're often taught the Superman posture, and as soon as you lift up your ribs, push your chest out, pull your shoulders back, you're going to be kicking in your fight or flight nervous system. Your back's going to be overused. And so as we learn to get our ribs back down into neutral and our back is not in an excessive curve, then we don't want the back flat either. We want the low back just to have a nice gentle curve, the upper back to have a nice gentle curve. When we can achieve that, that calms the nervous system down, and then you can start to feel your legs and arms in a way you didn't before. But if you're doing heavy weightlifting or you're doing some type of workout and you're feeling pain in your back, for the most part, you're typically overusing your back muscles.
Very interesting. Very interesting. I always, it was the over the head stuff on my left side
Mm-hmm.
would really strain like my side and my back. I'm not sure exactly what it was. I never got it checked out, but that
Yeah.
was something that really always got to me. But you have run 50 miles and been pain free. Is this part of the breathing technique? Is there a certain stretching that you also do, being a doctor of PT? Is there things that you do beforehand, or is this just the breathing?
Yeah, I stopped stretching and rolling
Wow.
and stuff. I stopped doing that because stretching is something external. You're applying something external to the body to force a muscle to do something. I would rather change my internal nervous system so the muscles learn to release. And so I don't typically stretch before or after runs. I'll do breathing. But in the middle of runs, I will practice and change my breathing, work on my body position in the middle of a run to make sure I stay pain free. And if I'm trained and I've trained up for it, and I'm used to running that distance, or you work up to that distance, I can keep myself out of issues. just by working on keeping my body in neutral and calming down my nervous system.
Wow. So when you're breathing and you're in the moment, are you breathing to say maybe you get a little bit tight in your calf? Are you breathing and sending that energy to your calf, or is it you're just changing your body position?
Right. Yeah, I'm not breathing to my calf,
Okay.
because it's the body position is off that's leading to the calf muscle to overwork. So
Okay.
if I change the part of my body that's off, the calf will release. And that's going to hold because I've changed myself positionally wise based on the nervous system. Because I don't want to force something into my calf. I want to release my calf by changing the position that's causing the calf to overwork.
Wow.
Interesting.
Yeah, yeah, that is very interesting. To me, I was always like, oh, I'm too tight. I got to stretch more. I was always thinking that when I first started running, and of course, when you first start out, you're going to be sore after doing some of these things. I was like, I was trying to make myself sore at one point because I'm like, okay, I got to figure out where my weakness is. Is that something that I should avoid? Should I want to never be or be as
Pain
unsore
free.
as possible?
Yes, I don't particularly try to be sore. Soreness is usually because a muscle is used abnormally and it's not prepared for that. So that's going to lead to some muscle fibers tearing and healing.
Hmm.
I want to strengthen appropriately so I can feel myself getting stronger, but I don't want to push to the limits where then I can't move for the next several days. Or if I go to squat down, then I can barely squat down. Does that happen? That happens with everyone, but it's not like I go and I seek that out. I try to avoid that. So if I know if I'm going to do something new, right after that activity, I'm going to put myself in different positions to calm myself down so that the muscles release, so they go back to their resting position, so I can minimize the soreness.
Okay. Very interesting. So being an ultra marathoner, what does that consist of? Is it only running, or is it bicycling? Is it swimming? Is it the combination? What is an ultra marathoner?
So an ultra marathoner is only running, and it's any distance that's greater than a marathon. So a marathon is 26.2 miles. So any race distance beyond that would be considered an ultra marathon. The common distances are a 50K, which is 31 miles. You have 50 milers, 100K, 100 milers. You'd even go up to 200 miles or even longer. But any of those would be considered an ultra marathon. Triathlons would be the swimming, biking, and running.
Okay, that is
And I thought like a 5K was pushing it.
yeah, that is an incredible feat that you do. So how often are you running marathons or ultra marathons?
It depends. Since I started my business, I've only done a few races just because I've been swamped with traveling and moving around and all of that. But it depends. Like back in, I don't know, 2015, I think I did 12 marathons and a couple ultras. I've done over 40 marathons and 10 ultra marathons so far.
Wow.
And that doesn't even count the number of training runs that I've done, 30, 40-mile training runs. I've lost track of all that.
Wow. So you did 12 marathons and a few ultra marathons in the span of 1 year. That's incredible. What I've always heard was you got to take a break for an extremely long period of time. So are you suggesting that people that if they have to take a break, maybe they're running in a position that's hurting their body and they should change up and they would be able to do as you're doing?
That's quite common the case. And so it's often a position, like just like you said, and often they may not be calming down their nervous system after every workout. And so that can lead to tightness, pain, impingement, something like that. But typically, after a race, even after a marathon, I'll say get up the next day, you got to move. Whether it's cycling, whether it's walking, or I'll go out for another run, you got to get your body moving for a couple of reasons. One, your nervous system is going to want to like shrink up and get everything tight. But two, you want to get your blood flowing. You want to get fluid in and out of your joints. But the other thing is when you do a race like a marathon or ultra or whatever distance, there is that high. And what typically happens, people new to the sport don't realize, is there's this huge depression as your hormones crash right after the race. And people will often go into a very deep depression and feel hopeless. And it's a very real phenomenon. So I say you've got to keep working out. If you want to stop racing and running, that's okay. But you have to wean out of it, just like you weaned into it. You have to wean out of it. Otherwise, you're going to have a really difficult mental journey for a while.
Well, yeah, I'm sure that there's so many chemicals are bombarding your body as you're doing this, getting runner's high. I've gotten runner's high one time, and I was like, whoa, I was a drug addict for a decade. So when I got this runner's high just 2 years ago, after being clean for several years, I was like, whoa, this is just incredible. Oxygen is really intoxicating, and they pump it into casinos for a reason. You get on that high, as they say. It really does. Oxygen really affects us in a way that we can't understand on just a regular day-to-day basis of how important it actually is. And the work that you're doing is so incredibly wonderful. And I'm so honored to meet someone that is doing this kinds of things that you're doing, because these are just incredible feats that you're talking about. You're like, oh yeah, I ran 12 marathons, a few ultra marathons, no big deal. That was just 2014, like that was just okay.
Well, I think when you start to realize a pattern and you realize you can calm yourself down and push yourself again, you realize, okay, I didn't do anything amazing. On paper, it sounds amazing. But what I'm doing is just being in tune with my body.
Right.
And I'm realizing if I can take care of my body fully and work on calming it down as much as I push it, I can achieve what sounds like great things on paper. As you're going through it, you're still celebrating your wins and that, but you're like, okay, I was able to do that. Okay, how do I go next? How do I do it next? How do I do it safely again? And you're kind of just going through it. You're not always thinking about, okay, I have to accomplish these things for the accolades. You're in the trenches and you're just going forward.
Yeah. So you like to push your physical limits? Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah. So every year I would try to do a different type of challenge to see how I would handle it. And so I did that for many years until probably about 2019 is when I started shifting to more business orientation, and I'm challenging myself in a different way right now.
Wow. Wow, very impressive. And on top of it, we got a few minutes left here. You're a photographer. Do you travel internationally to do photography?
I do. I just actually was in Iceland back in November for a week doing traveling all over, doing some photography, and it was phenomenal. Amazing.
I heard Antarctica too as well.
Yep. Antarctica, to photograph the emperor penguins down there, and really incredible. If you ever get a chance to go to any of these polar climates, I highly recommend it.
Oh yeah, I mean I'm not one for the cold.
We have a friend headed up that way.
Yeah, I have a friend, Ryan Zem. He's actually trekking to the North Pole right now on foot.
Ooh, nice.
He's crossing the border into Canada as we speak. He's been prepping the last few months, and then he's going to go down to Antarctica afterwards. He wants to find the poles. He wants to see
for
what's
himself,
up there.
yes.
Yeah.
That's incredible. And I assume he's done a lot of research on how to get to the poles. Awesome.
And
he studied, languages along the way, and
the
food
native
preparation,
peoples,
and health and nutrition while he's, in that climate.
That's incredible. What most people don't realize, so I grew up in the Phoenix area, and I used to say I hated cold. And once I realized it all matters what clothes you wear, that's a game changer. Once you could get the right clothes, all of a sudden you can handle the cold.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm someone that used to have a parka on at 80 degrees Fahrenheit. So now going to these polar climates, I'm like, okay, I have the right gear. But I couldn't find it in the Phoenix area, and I couldn't find people knowledgeable to teach me about that. So I had to go elsewhere. And once I got the correct gear, you're completely fine.
Yeah.
And it seems crazy, but if you knew me back then, you wouldn't believe what I do now. It's just the gear. It really is.
Do your breathing techniques help you in the colder weather as well?
It does. It does. It keeps me calm and it makes sure I don't get too ramped up and I don't go into a panic. So, absolutely.
Okay. Have you? I would be, I wouldn't be a very good interviewer if I didn't ask you about the Wim Hof method. If you have you tried that? Doing the superhuman things that he does with breath and also with keeping his body in certain temperatures.
Yeah, so he does amazing stuff, and there's a little bit of a difference on what we do, and I like to explain it, so I'm glad you brought it up. So, with his breathing style, he hyperventilates people.
Mm-hmm.
And by hyperventilating someone, he has them bring up their sympathetic threshold, their fight or flight nervous system. It gets ramped up higher so they can handle the extreme cold. Or, like he was injected with E. coli. When you ramp up your nervous system initially, there's an immune response, a heightened immune response, which is why he can handle the cold, the ice baths, the marathons and the blizzards, the E. coli injections, because it's ramping someone up. And then when they stop, they fall back down. And so it feels relaxing because when you get ramped up so high, the drop
Yes.
back down is going to feel great because you were so high. So let's say, so if we have a 2 levels, if he ramps you up above your top level and then you fall down, I'm taking you at where you're at and teaching you how to control yourself back down to your baseline. So it's a different process and technique altogether and for different purposes.
Right.
So I don't like to hyperventilate myself. So I don't practice his style, but I know if I were in a situation where I needed it, yeah, I can do that for sure. I just, on a regular basis, I like to be calm. And the clients I work with, they're typically in the position where they need to calm down.
Right.
People that he works with, they're a lot of times they're athletes, they're
Seeking things.
looking to ramp themselves up, and they're usually typically pretty healthy. And
Mm-hmm.
he even gives warnings if you have different health conditions, don't do this.
Right.
Well, I'm taking all the other people and saying, okay, you have these health conditions, or you're already ramped up, and maybe you're not the stellar athlete. Let's bring you back down so you can become more athletic, and then maybe eventually do what he's talking about.
Okay, yeah, and I said I wouldn't be a very good interview because I've mentioned him many times on my
Mhm.
podcast. I've actually been told that my breathing technique is sort of a combination of things, and
Mhm.
his being one of them. And the way that it's such a deep breathing exercise, someone said it's kind of like exercise that they felt like
Mhm.
they were working out after my breathing technique. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, so the first time I tried his breathing technique, I actually saw Aztec type of symbols right in front of my face, red, like just appearing in thin air, like
Mhm.
triangles and all sorts of weird stuff. I was like, "Whoa, that is intense." I mean, it was too much for me. I gave it a week. I learned what I learned, and then I was like, "Yeah, that's not something I want to practice regularly."
Yeah. It's, every person is different, and it really is, what are your needs and what are you trying to accomplish? And that will help determine what type of breathing style that you resonate with. And I recommend people try all different types.
Yeah.
See what your needs are, try all different types, because you never know what resonates with you.
Right.
Something that may work for you may not work for me. Like, that's okay. That's why we're human.
Yeah, I love that. You came here, Dr. Amy, and you really knocked it out of the park. I am so honored to have had you on. Mimi, do you have any final questions for me?
I do. What is the most common posture issue that you deal with in your patients that you could give a simple breathing exercise for? Would it be sitting, standing, leaning? What is the most common posture issue?
Um, I say this in all honesty, there isn't really a common posture issue. It's a lot of people, like, they hold their rib cage too high, but
Mhm.
it's not like one position is going to solve that. It's a combination of different positions, because when you hold your rib cage too high, you're doing it whether you're sitting, you're kneeling, you're bending over, you're sleeping. It's not like one position is
Mhm.
going to be your end all. So when I work with people, I'm giving them 4 or 5 positions that they can work on to help shift them.
All right.
Okay.
Yeah, sounds good. So do you want to let our listeners know where they can find you?
Sure. I'm in all the different social medias, but I recommend people reach out to me, send me an email, Amy, AMY at PABRinstitute.com, PABR Institute.com. I'd love to learn about you. Send me an email if you need free resources or if you want to jump on a call, 15-minute free consultation or get started. Or I can just send you resources, videos, whatever you need. So I like to connect with people.
Wow, just incredible. You are doing the Lord's work, my friend. I am so glad to have met you and have you on my podcast. This was a very big day for me today to be able to speak with you. So thank you so much for blessing us with your presence.
Thank you so much for your time and allowing me to share. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. So we'll say goodbye to our audience. Goodbye, everybody.